I think it's very much feasible. It kind of shows the confidence India has on its growth momentum. See, when we started in 2025, there was a lot of uncertainty. Even demand was moderating. Who could have ever thought that we would have 8% growth in the first half of fiscal year? I mean, it beat all expectations, right? So clearly, there is an underlying resilience, and it was not by chance, by the way. The government has made concerted efforts by bringing in tax reforms, by easing the monetary policy stance, and bringing in a lot of reforms like be the labor code. So it's addressing the demand side and the supply side simultaneously. And this is kind of helping in ensuring that the resilience stays through. It's not a very short time thing. With the fact that growth has been 8%, now that we are expecting the budget to be very reforms focused, and now most likely the government will look at the supply side of the economy with demand being resilient, I think 6.8 to 7.2 is highly achievable. I think it's probably more latter, and I can see the reason why, because when they project an economy, they look at the external sector a lot, the global uncertainty, which weighs on their model. Which at the end of the day, it's an effort of how you're putting your assumptions and how the model is responding to that. For India, our exposure to the external sector is first very limited. Export is just 20% of the GDP. And secondly, if you see, our exports did dip in the month of September and October, but look at the November numbers. We have actually very high exports. Clearly, India is diversifying its market. It has been able to remain resilient despite the higher tariffs imposed by the US. Now that the fact that we are signing so many FTAs, that gives even more confidence that the sectors which will remain most vulnerable, take marine, take the auto parts, right? Even textile. These are the sectors which were most affected because of the tariffs imposed by the US. These are also the sectors which are focused in all the FTAs that India is signing. That gives a lot of confidence in India that when we grow, these sectors will be able to sell their products, even though US situation in the US may not change, right? So that is what is underlying in our assumptions, and hence our growth projections are higher. So this disconnect remains, and if you look historically, India has beaten IMF projections year after year in recent years, right? So I would not be surprised that it will continue the years going forward as well. Quite a few. I think one of the biggest risk would be how quickly India can sign the FTA with US. I mean, while it's good that India is diversifying, but at the end of the day, US remains our largest trading partner. And more importantly, we depend on the US a lot for our services exports. And services account for almost 55-56% of our GDP. Now, if anything happens on that sector, it can really derail our growth projections. While we are doing a lot of FTAs, which is now focusing on services, mobility, etc., but these will be implemented a year later. Till then, we have to hold on to that fort. And I think it's also impacting a lot on investment sentiments. If you look at the FII outflows, I mean, what is the reason for it? We have very good, strong economic fundamentals. Growth is at 8%, and yet FIIs are flowing out. Clearly, it is impacting on sentiments, on investing, weighing on investors' appetite to spend. Once the deal is signed, and then there will be a lot more certainty, and there will be a lot more private investments coming in. So that remains one of the big risks. Second, I would say is how is monetary policy easing translating into credit growth? It's been a year since the RBI has been reducing rates, and credit growth is only now showing up, going up to 12%. So the quickly that credit growth translation happens, the better we will be able to see economy sustaining growth over the years. So that's linkages is something which you need to be watchful about. Currency depreciation and its impact on valuation. That is also a very big risk. We are seeing currency depreciating really fast, and it can actually offset many of the gains that we can get from FTAs. Just think about the fact that we are giving away a lot of tariffs to on cars, on the wines that we are importing from EU. But if our currency is depreciating by 20% in a year, then all that gains are wiped off, right? So these are certain things that India needs to be very, very careful. Yes, there is clearly a disconnect, because if you look at our economic fundamentals, we are in probably one of the best positions. Current account deficit, one of the lowest. Inflation, all-time low. GDP, pretty high. Even fiscal deficit, we were at 9.2% of the GDP 5 years back. From there on, we have consistently brought down deficit to 4.4%. Commendable efforts. And it's not just bringing down deficit. Look at the prudence by which we have allocated our budget every year. Capex is going up, revenue expenditures coming down. So clearly, economic fundamentals has remained strong. What probably has resulted in the depreciation of the currency is the fact that, one, investor sentiments, because of which FIIs have fallen down. By the way, FDI has been one of the strongest this year. Inflows, gross inflows. It's a net which is very low because, one, we have seen repatriation very high, which is again a factor of uncertainties. Second, and very interesting, outward FDI, which means Indian companies have appetite to invest, but they're investing abroad, not in India. That is what needs to change. And I think that is where the government will also focus going forward, because we need private investment in India. And once that starts picking up, I think a lot of these mismatches will go away. I think I have always felt that India has done really well at when things have gone bad. I mean, I think it's like one says, when the tough gets, things gets tough gets going, right? And India has outperformed expectation from its own market analysts, right? So I think this will be a time that India will come up with lots of reforms, that actually make a difference on the ground, because now the acceptance of taking those challenging reforms is much higher. The people will be able to accept it because we know we have to make those differences, otherwise we will not be able to survive. So the fact that India could bring in the labor reforms, it was announced almost 3-4 years back, and it got implemented in November, December last year. Similarly, many other reforms in energy, in the space of energy, in the space of ease of doing business. I think these will make a huge difference, and this is probably the time when the government can actually bring in those reforms with less resistance, most likely. So I think it's all about how India can turn this lime into lemonade situation, and then make things work in a way so that we can deal with the global uncertainty going forward. Why not? I mean, I see no reason why we should not. Of course, there are challenges. A lot can change. Global uncertainties are very high, and things are changing not by months but by weeks, right? But the fact that we are seeing really good reforms on ground, the fact that there's a lot of optimism about India, because see, in a way, all the uncertainties are actually playing to the benefit of India. There are a lot of countries who were probably relying on China or in the US are now suddenly looking for other alternate destinations, and India is in a way becoming a very attractive investment destination. So now, can we say we are becoming China +1 and US +1? Maybe. So yes, of course, 7% is achievable, and if the reforms are right and we can implement those reforms, it should not be on papers, it has to be implemented quickly, then I think the growth could be much more broad-based, and I think that could take growth easily at 7%. See, AI will be talked about, because today AI is changing the world we never had expected to, the way it is doing so. And there are a lot of uncertainties around how the world will pan out the next 5 years, maybe the next 10 years. We don't know. But as we learn, we realize AI will become like integral to businesses, to our lives as well. And the quicker we realize it, the quicker we adopt it, the better we are, because our productivity goes up, our cost of production goes down, and also we become much more agile to what is coming our way. Now, coming to the fact that yes, India is a labor intensive economy, we have a huge workforce, and the way AI is changing will probably take away a lot of jobs which where you had a lot of people working. That is where it becomes a challenge for India, because India needs to upskill these existing workforce so that they can adopt and get onto the new kind of jobs that is coming our way. AI is being adopted, but it's still not scalable, and it is only possible when workforce adopts it and quickly become more productive. And that is where I think the government has been insisting on AI skills. I mean, I think last two budgets, a large proportion of the discussion has been around AI skill, and allocations have been made along that as well. And I think this budget also, it will continue to do so. Government will keep focusing on AI because we understand how AI can make a difference, not to the workers, but even to the lives. So having a focus on AI is not surprising. It's all about how quickly we can adopt AI in our work, in our deliverables. And I think we are seeing that happening. Look at the GCCs. Earlier, we were just a back office. We were just few call centers. That's what we knew about India, right? We have moved up the value chain in services. A lot of R&D is being done here, right? Or a lot of professional services are being exported to the US and Europe. And and many of these services will only become more complicated with the AI. So, and I think a lot of private companies are investing in this. In fact, that's where the whole of investment is going right now. And that will continue going forward, and India will see very quickly picking up. In fact, India, by the way, according to Stanford University, they come up with an AI index. India is the second highest AI skilled in terms of its workforce adoption after the US. And after the third is like way after. The huge gap, huge, yes. So that number is huge, and we are like closing with the US. That tells you that workforce is adopting AI very, very fast. Well, the ones who were denying, probably they are also changing their stance now. Yes. But I think at least in critical and strategic sectors, India really need to become self-reliant. We cannot be dependent on other countries for energy. That has become a big reason for our for not getting our negotiations go through, right? Again, semiconductors, right? Data centers. If we are moving up the technology ladder, if we are adopting AI, we cannot be dependent on critical digital infrastructure on the West, because you never know when things could get unplugged. What will happen? Things will just fall apart. So we really need to be self-sufficient in certain critical defense. Again, we need to make sure that we can protect our citizens, and that's where I think, again, build our own defense and not depend on others. And I think what the government is doing is, if you look at all the FTAs, focus on AI, focus on defense, focus on energy. Because going forward, if we are building an AI infrastructure or technology infrastructure, we need a huge power. We cannot say that we will keep relying on fossil fuels. We need renewables. So for even their energy, we need to have reliance and security.
Even for data centers.
For data centers, yes. Data centers is critical for, if so many people are adopting AI, just imagine the amount of network, exactly, network we need and energy we need. And India has a lot of advantages. We have long coastlines. So we have water access, which is very, very important. Now it's about us, how we can tap into the solar, water, wind energy to reduce our dependence on fossil fuel as such. Well, see, I think this is one thing which I should appreciate the government. They kind of highlight the importance of food or anything bad habits that can have an impact on health, be it cigarettes. I think India does a fantastic job in making people aware what it can do to your health. Junk food is also another one, right? And I think the government's approach is from a perspective is how it impacts health. Because at the end of the day, if citizens are not healthy, it will impact your productivity. It will increase your spending on health, which means your consumption will come down. So it's going to hurt us in many ways. Now, the other challenge is, will it impact the demand for such goods? Yes, maybe, and it probably hurts the food and food products industry, which is one of the biggest growing sectors. In fact, one of the PLIs is focusing on food products, so it do put some risk on that sector. But I think it's also a challenge for these FMCG sectors to pivot their strategy. Why does the food product have to be unhealthy? Go for packaged food which are healthy. Makhanas, right? Who would have ever thought people would actually demand for those healthy biscuits, right? Healthy many
snacks.
snacks.
Is now completely different
Yes,
category.
and I think there is a rising awareness among consumers as well. People are demanding for that. So if they start focusing on that and start scaling them up, the cost of such goods will also come down. And these are healthy options. So even people who were probably going for potato chips will probably go for some chips which are healthier, say banana chips maybe. So if the costs are the same, why would people not prefer banana chips over a potato chip? So I think that's where the pivot is, and I think companies should also see the opportunity that comes from this, and not take this as a disadvantage. I think the government has already done that. If you look at the labor codes, they have addressed this challenge of gig workers, and I think many of the companies are now kind of changing their HR strategies to incorporate many of those changes that they have to do. Yes, initially there will be some teething issues. I think it's already moderating earnings for many of the companies because they had to provide insurance, social security, give them fair wages. But so be it. Today, in a world where we have a huge workforce who wants to remain agile, who want across sectors, who wants to have the freedom of choosing their own careers, not just by compulsion but by choice. Why should they suffer because there is no fair pay to them, right? So let that be, and also this gives a freedom for the companies to flexibility to work with the labor force. It gives the people who are looking for jobs also the flexibility to move their careers when they seem it to be fit. So having this in the economic survey is not surprise, because the government is already addressing it. We will see some impact on margins, but I think over time it will also start getting normalized. So very important, gig workers is a trend that is here to stay. And in fact, with technology changing, we will probably see a lot more demand for gig workers as well. So it's time that we start discussing bringing this as a policy and implement it.